Yes. So yeah, I think go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Apologies to everybody. I don't know quite what went wrong. We tested it all the other day and it all worked beautifully. But of course, best laid plans and all that. So I think what we'll do is we won't do the full hour now, I don't think, but we'll just give you an introduction to the game. So just rush through everything, I guess. I'm Sarah. I am the editor of Ludagogy, which is a games-based learning and gamification magazine. And yes, I'll leave it at that for now because I don't think we've got an awful lot of time for lots of introductions.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely relate to the short time frame now. I'm Terry. My business is Untold Play. I've been in learning and development for 20 years, but over that time, I've focused more and more on learning design and then more and more on using games-based learning and gamification and learning design. So that's where my passion is, and that's what led me to work with Sarah on Ludagogy and to come to this game today, actually. So yeah, this game came about because we're both really interested in exploring what games can do. And Sarah, in particular, you've worked for a number of years, haven't you, in with your business Games for Good, in social responsibility, kind of helping, good.
Yeah, lots of work with climate change and ecosystem degradation and so on. So I'm sort of particularly interested in that area. So we decided we'd come up with something, a bit of a meta game, which is really, it's not complex in any way, shape or form. And if we were doing this in real life, we'd probably do it with a set of cards on a table. But because obviously everything's now virtual, I implemented it in Excel. And it's really just about generating, well, there's a number of ways of playing it. And I think we'll start off with possibly the easiest way of playing it, to just generate 4 random cards and just have a riff on the kind of ideas that come out of that. So just to introduce you to what the cards are, we have problems cards, which is because we want to look at wicked problems. We've got things like climate change, racism, inequality, and so on in there. Outcomes and experiences would be what we want to come out of it, because we're talking about games for learning here. Frameworks and concepts, so they're just either learning frameworks or ideas or possibly games theories and so on that we've come across, or even things that are outside both of those fields. And toys, tools and techniques, it's all the lovely stuff we like to play with, whether it's Lego or a particular game mechanic we're fond of. So basically what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to click this button here, just generate 4 random cards.
Just while Sarah's doing that,
I didn't want that to break as well. Please don't break this as well.
Just while Sarah's doing that, I'll give you a heads up as well on what we're planning to do after. So this is just demoing how the cards work, and then we'll start to get you involved a little bit as we make it into more and more of a game and build it throughout the session.
So I don't know if any of you have seen the pre-recorded thing that Terry and I did for Spiel. It's much more organised than this, basically because it was pre-recorded. But basically what we did there was we just generated a few rounds of random cards and then just riffed on what we might come up with. So here we go. So what we've got here, gender inequality, an outcome around responsibility, which goes quite well with gender inequality, silliness and the wise fool. So that's a kind of an archetypal idea about, well, similar to out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, I suppose, the idea that people who sometimes appear to be foolish can sometimes have great wisdom. And our tool or technique is performance. So any ideas, Terry?
Interesting one.
Yeah. To you?
So we're saying really that how could we get games, how could we create a game, how could a game help to educate people about gender inequality, or particularly help to give them a sense of responsibility around gender inequality by using these couple of concepts, the wise fool, the silliness, and performance. That's interesting. I wonder if this kind of performance could be linked to the idea that we put on a mask of being different in gender to what we are. So we start to, as part of the game, imagine what it would be like, or play another gender, a different gender to what we are. I'm having difficulty linking that with silliness, I guess. I'm
But
just
it
thinking.
was silliness that jumped out for me, actually,
Go on.
because it reminded me of a conversation I had the other day on LinkedIn. When I say conversation, it was more of a row, really, but you know, as you do from time to time, with some chap who was talking about the idea of positive discrimination. And it started out because he'd read a piece about Adidas wanting to employ more black people in sort of like at C-suite level. And he was having a bit of a rant and saying, well, this will mean that, you know, people who are better qualified will be turned down for a job just so they can give it to a black person. So I tried to explain to him that, you know, this really wasn't the case, because that's quite a racist sort of viewpoint, because it implies that there aren't suitably qualified black people around, and it doesn't take into account that really what you're needing to be doing is changing your hiring policies and the way and all of the things that would reinforce those gender those racial stereotypes and so on, and the fact that, you know, people, when they whiten their CVs, they stand a better job of getting called in for an interview. So all of this, but he wasn't having it at all. But he kept saying he understood what I was saying, but he still didn't think that it was a racist idea, that, you know, whatever. So then I said, okay, well, let's try this. Let's replace the word black with red-haired and see how that sounds.
Interesting.
And he went, well, yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. You wouldn't discriminate against people on the grounds that they have red hair. So maybe that silliness thing is you just replace things in statements to make them sound really ridiculous, so that people understand the underlying ridiculousness of something.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then you could perhaps combine that with performance and actually even get people to kind of act it out or play it out in some way, depending on how the kind of rules or pieces were, so that they could really kind of, there's a name for that in argument terms, isn't there? And
non sequitur.
And I'm thinking of the logical extension thing, like when you take something to its logical conclusion, but it's an absurdity, you know.
Oh, ad absurdum.
Yeah.
Ad absurdum.
Yes, exactly.
I can't say it.
Yeah. So kind of illustrating in that way how absurd it is, and getting them to actually see how silly it gets the more you extend it, or the more different, because you gave them a context there with interviews. If you extend it to different elements of work and how it would actually play out then, and how it's really silly, exactly as you say, when it's something that we wouldn't dream of doing that with, but then pop back in the whatever's the issue, so gender inequality in this case, or racism in the case that you were talking about, and there's your kind of your moment of revelation or whatever.
Okay.
Interesting.
So another way of playing this game would be to keep some cards and swap others out. So maybe a little bit of audience participation here.
Yeah, great. So yeah, what we're looking to do
would you like replaced?
is get people involved. So if you're in the Zoom, put ideas in the chat. If you are in the YouTube, then you can definitely pop ideas into the YouTube chat. I'll be looking at both, and we'll definitely kind of take on board what you're saying and try and incorporate that into what we're doing. We'll build up more structure and rules about it a little bit later, but this is just showing how the cards can interact and hopefully give inspiration, just as we've shown. So do you have some of these cards that you'd like to replace with other ideas? Or do you yourself have some ideas about some of the combinations, or building on some of the ideas that we've talked about? So Eric's just saying in the chat there, sorry, just logged on now, not quite sure what you need from me. Just as you said there, if that's making sense, Eric, just watch for a little bit and get the hang of it. If you're not sure, that's fine as well.
I'll leave you in charge of the chat, Terry, because
sure.
I'm driving the game.
Jay Conrad on the YouTube is saying, can you swap out the red card? Meanwhile, A. Mitra is asking, can you explain the yellow card a bit more? And if I take that for 1 second, yes, the performance, well, the idea of the yellow card in general, toys, tools, techniques, so it's something on a relatively micro level that is an element of some or many games. So if I just give you an example of some of the other things that are on other cards in that yellow deck, turns, or balance, or meeples, such as you get in the Euro board games, or outdoor space. So some of those kind of things, little mechanics, elements, and how we
changing rules, wordplay.
Good. Some of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's answered Amy's question. Let me know if not. But Jay kind of suggesting that we swap out the red card. So
okay,
I think that's our first bit of
the new card. Sigmire says that a game is a series of interesting decisions. Okay. So bearing in mind, we're still performing and we're still trying to engender a feeling of responsibility. I need to let some people in.
Good stuff. Yeah, some more people arriving. Excellent. I think, yeah, so if we think about decision points and maybe combine it with what you were just saying around, taking redheadedness or some other kind of slightly less contentious or less central kind of quality of people, then we could start really out there with people who the third letter in their name is Z, or something really out there, and then maybe just bring it in by degree. So say, okay, the second round or the second decision point is, would you take that decision or would you do that thing if it was this or if it was this, and then just bring it closer and closer to something that's a little bit harder to answer or that's a bit more common.
I mean, I guess this decisions suggests quite a lot of different kind of mechanics that you could have in a game about gender inequality, because basically a lot of gender inequality is implemented through decision making. Making a decision whether or not to employ somebody, making a decision about what you believe somebody is like, or what you believe they're capable of, or what you believe they should be paid, and so on and so forth. So all of those decisions, you could definitely build those into a game around gender inequality.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
So,
We've got.
I just wonder if anybody wants to unmute themselves if they've got an idea based on the cards that we've pulled out so far.
Talking to people in the Zoom in particular. Eric has popped up in the chat and said definitely get a new yellow card.
Makes me think of pre-mortems, like this a game is a series of interesting decisions. Especially with something like gender inequality and responsibility. I think you could use to me that would be the pre-mortem.
Yeah, so kind of imagining that it's gone wrong and then tracing it back to
wrong.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You don't have to imagine it, Terry.
No. Sure. I was thinking within the game, but yeah, if you're going to link it to real life, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good. And just in the chat from the YouTube, we've got convert the issue of gender inequality into a series of micro issues from Amitra as a suggestion. Yeah, that's quite an interesting call, I think. So it can seem quite a big thing to tackle, but if we make it more relatable on an everyday level to the microaggressions, but also micro issues that might seem almost inconsequential, but they build up.
Well, here's another way that people can join in. If I just reveal the inner workings of what we're working with here.
Yeah, actually, Jake Connor did say, how did the cards get populated? Is there a deck of cards that are already preset? Or do we make the cards ourselves?
Let me just move things around on my screen a bit. So it is literally very, very simple. As I say, this is just a rapid prototype, basically. So a bit of VBA to make all the buttons work and everything. But in terms of the populating of the cards, it's just lists. Anybody who's here, well, anybody, in fact, I'm quite willing to let you download this game if you want to play with it. And obviously you can change the lists to be whatever you like. And this is literally all they are. I wouldn't suggest playing around with the VBA unless you've got a bit of a background in it. Just trust that it's all going to work. But the way I've set it up, anybody can take this file and they can put in up to 100 with the VBA setup as it is, different items in each of the columns. And you'll also notice actually it's also set up to have other sides as well. So in some of the, let me just select somebody in. On the toys, we've actually got some of the toys have actually got a second side. So we've got, for example, here we've got chance being one of the toys or one of the mechanics, and the opposite of that, if you like, is skill. So if we wanted to split the issue of inequality or gender inequality into other issues, we could certainly do that by just writing more stuff in our
Yeah,
lists.
yeah, absolutely. Although I think the suggestion was actually kind of within the game. So I think Amateur is suggesting converting the issue into a series of micro issues and designing quick solutions for each micro issue, which you would work on either level actually, by in what we're doing now or as part of a game. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, do we want to get 4 more cards?
Yeah, I think we should show how it might work with some new ones, and perhaps introduce another game concept into this little game, because I think what's interesting here is we're playing a game, and we're playing a game about designing games. So what we can do is we can start to introduce rules into what we're doing, like the idea of turns, for instance. So if we get 4 new cards, then maybe I can have a quick turn with them and then pass a turn over to Sarah, for instance, with the same cards. You still there, Sarah? Okay, I can't hear you, Sarah. I don't know if that's everyone or if it's me. Oh, you've gone. Okay. Can everyone else still hear me? Can someone in the Zoom just tell me if you can still hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So we just lost Sarah, unfortunately. Okay. Fortunately, I do have this in my background, the cards. So I'm going to just share it, and I'm sure Sarah will get back to us very soon. And in the meantime, I will share my screen. Okay.
Well, that was great. So my laptop, I don't think anything else could possibly go wrong. Or maybe I shouldn't say that. My laptop literally died, so I'm now on my other laptop.
Okay, really sorry to hear that, Sarah. If you can see, then I'm now sharing my screen.
That's all right.
Oh, will that share to the YouTube though? Yeah.
I don't know.
Perhaps somebody in the YouTube.
No, it should still be running.
Yeah.
Because the meeting's still running.
Yeah. Okay.
It just made a horrible noise, and it now won't switch on. So it has literally. It needs to go to hospital. Unbelievable.
Okay. So yeah, this is all working okay here. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'll do this screen here as well then. So we're going to try and introduce the idea of turns. So I'll have a turn with these and then maybe pass it over to you, Sarah. Fake news. How could we educate people about fake news or help them explore the idea of fake news and have some empathy, interesting, using the framework concept of Victoria, which is the Ikisley Bartels, I believe, self-gamification, which is the idea of combining a sense of playfulness with a sense of kind of anthropology of the self, which is kind of self-reflectiveness in little mini moments throughout the day. So kind of looking at what you're doing and saying to yourself, is there a more gameful or more playful way that I can do things in this moment, is the essence of that framework or concept. And the toy or tool that we could perhaps combine with that is observing the magic circles. So I wonder if the empathy and the fake news thing suggests to me something around trying to empathize with the people who are perhaps taken in by fake news or are more likely to believe in some kind of fake news that plays to their existing beliefs. So I don't know if we could do something there.
I think that's really interesting, because I read a piece of news yesterday about a poll that's just been carried out in the UK. Did you read about that?
No, go ahead.
Apparently 42% of people believe the stuff that's on QAnon. Right. and that is stuff around that there are Satan worshipping groups of elites who are abusing children. Okay. And it's up to 42% of people within the 18 to 35 age bracket believe that. And you think that's quite scary, and actually your first reaction is how can people possibly believe that? So I think your point about empathy is really, really interesting. Sort of trying to get to the bottom of why, not just why people believe it, because the mechanics are quite clear on that. You know, if they're getting all of their news through Facebook, for example, that self-perpetuating algorithm that if they're interested in something, they'll get fed more of it. That explains why it happens. But it's more, why do people want to believe it, which I think is the more interesting bit, which gets to the empathy aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. So something using this self-gamification and observing the magic circle. The magic circle being the magic circle of what's inside the game and what's outside the game. What we choose, you know, this kind of invisible circle, like the edge line of a pitch in a physical game. The idea of magic circle with the kind of self-reflective in the moment stuff makes me think about a game that kind of goes on and on through the day rather than when you sit down and play as a board game, and one that challenges you to say, am I playing the game or am I applying this to my real life? Something maybe even like Pokemon Go, but obviously perhaps not using VR, but that's encouraging you to go throughout your day and say, what kind of things can I empathize with on people's perception of this piece of news? It could be a mobile game. I know we're in Spiel and we're supposed to be talking about board games.
I think one of the things that kind of suggests to me is actually having explicit circles within the game, whereby you have to maybe role play or maybe think about, when you're in this circle, you have to believe this thing. When you're outside of this circle, you have to believe the opposite, or you have to believe something else. That might be quite interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting, asking people to switch themselves out of it. So yeah, it's almost like it's a game, and it's fake when you're in the circle, but then look from outside.
Yeah.
So if we could really hear from other people here as well. We could, if you want to switch one of these cards and see how that might affect things with more new ideas, or perhaps if you have some ideas of your own. Sarah, I don't know if you can look at the chat in the Zoom. I don't seem to be able to see the chat in the Zoom for some reason right now. That's gone. I've got it now. Sorry. Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only got one message because obviously I've only just recently joined the.
That's fine. I can see it now.
Yeah.
So I hope some people are still able to interact via the YouTube, unless they've all come here to the Zoom. I'm not seeing any other chats in the YouTube.
Okay. So if there's anything anybody wants to suggest that we do. Yes, Eric, that is the idea. Yeah. So yeah, the card. So if you want to suggest some game ideas that come out of that for you, that would be more than welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I may have an idea, which is taking those 4 cards.
Yeah.
You can have a game which is actually a card game, and the idea is that people around you, say for example you are player 1 and there are 3 more, they throw cards with potential, say, fake news, and they need to guess how likely you are to agree with those ideas. And then there is kind of a bit of mathematics or some, I don't know, mechanic in the background to determine the winner. But it's kind of using the magic circle, meaning people around you or close to you, and they should know you. And then they propose a fake news that you are most likely to buy into.
Yeah. That's also one of the other things about fake news, is the way it spreads so well. So that might be another way of looking at, if you have cards with either fake or real news on, and which I guess would be created in play, because you would just write something down on a white clean card or something, and then people decide whether or not they want to pass that on, or they're going to reject it, and it's just going to go no further.
Yeah, and that idea of bringing in the spread of it, I could make it into more of a kind of turn-based game. We could see which ones spread and which ones don't spread. And as Eric's saying, if you know a little bit about the people, perhaps if even at the start of the game, you were able to kind of place your marker on, this is the kind of where I am on a political spectrum or whatever, and they're based on that, see how that affects where the news spreads or which piece of news spread.
Yeah.
And you even mentioning that thing, Sarah, or building onto that thing you mentioned about spread, you can have a game similar to Ticket to Ride, and let's say different players control different areas of the board. And if your fake news is good and they allow it to spread, it's like you can use their territory to continue spreading your news.
Yeah, no, I like that. Like that idea. We should make this game, Eric.
You could even start to then.
I'm open for it.
Oh, sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No. I was just kind of joking, replying. Well, not joking, but replying to Sarah, saying that we should definitely make that game.
You could even bring in something about the differential power of different social media networks, or different how some of them are more susceptible to kind of spreading fake news if you put them as different vectors for news. I'm just looking at the chat here. Abhishek saying, let's have a full ideation cycle. I'm not sure 100% what you mean by that. Do you mean going through beyond just general ideas at this stage, Abhishek?
Yeah, I was actually not sure what the concept was, so I thought I can have a full ideation to solve one of the issues. Like, you take fake news, can we develop the idea and come up? Maybe in 10 minutes we do a quick sprint and come up with something, and then like something a little bit concrete. But now I'm getting a hang of it. So
right,
I was in YouTube, but then I came here from YouTube. So I got that's right.
Yes, Amitra, yes. I think that's perhaps why nobody's on the YouTube anymore. Hopefully everyone's found their way here now, actually.
I was also thinking, what if you have a fake news about yourself? So, for example, you sit with strangers and you have to write and people kind of write things about yourself, or you write some things about yourself, and they either have to figure out whether it's true or not. Because it's like a self-gamification kind of thing. How would we feel if somebody spreads fake news about us? So the empathy factor comes in there, and how would that go about? I'm not sure, but then thought cropped into my mind. So
yeah, I think that's interesting. Definitely. We've got one from Alvaro in the chat as well. Game based on Cards Against Humanity. One player presents a fake news. Players trying to come up with the story of the effect of the story, and the person who presented the card decide which one has the most empathy. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
You could make a sort of 2-team competitive game as well, where one team's trying to spread fake news and the other team are trying to stem the spread of the fake news.
Yeah.
Or could you also have what's that game called? Is it called Magic Corpse or something like that, where one person starts and then folds it over, and then the next person has to draw the next bit?
Yeah.
So you could like leave one word and see where the fake news goes to. Like,
yeah, an exquisite cult fake news game. Yeah, that sounds like quite a good idea.
Really interesting. I think there's some great ideas coming out here, and this I think is showing how the power of something like this, the simplicity of it, can lead to all these kind of sparks in different directions that we can go in. And do we want to do any changing around with this one, or if we're aiming to end at 3, still, I guess, do we want to try and get another iteration in? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So one thing I would like to say is, obviously, we've had a few technical difficulties today. One of the things that Ludigogi is planning on doing is having regular events, and something like this. So an event where maybe we have an hour and play a few games of this is the sort of thing we're looking to be doing. So if anybody is interested and has not been completely horrified by our technical inadequacies today, look out for potential future events where we'll be playing this and other games. So do you want to have 4 new cards?
Okay.
I think you're in charge. You're driving now.
Yeah, I have the power. I've already had gender equality, so I'll switch that one out. And actually, I'm going to switch that one just because we did that one on the video, and I want a new one. And we've had that. There you go. So, lack of social mobility, embodied learning. So people to really embody learning using Nicole Lazzaro's 4 keys. So serious fun that really changes the person, or easy fun that's kind of almost entertainment, or people fun that's about socializing, or hard fun that's about challenge and achievement. And then sensory deprivation, which is quite interesting. Do you want to start with that one, Sarah?
Yeah. Thanks, Terry. So, sensory deprivation. Okay, I guess you could use sensory deprivation as an allegory for lack of social mobility. So lack of social mobility is obviously about being disadvantaged in certain ways. So you could disadvantage people within the game by making them not able to hear or not able to see, and use that as a kind of, what's the word I want? An allegory or a, the word's gone, but yeah. And that would fit in well with embodied learning, because obviously you're using your body or the lack of your senses as a way of making that learning happen.
That's really powerful. I remember a game that I used to play in training sessions that worked really well, where people were blindfolded and had to feel some very similar shapes, but they were very subtly different to feel. But if you actually looked at them, they looked very, very different. And people would be trying to explain the shape they had and match it with other people's similar shape. And he'd say, oh, it's got two bumps here and a curve here and a spike here. And someone else would say, oh, yes, I've got that shape. And you'd be looking at, because you could see, you look at both of them and say, well, those two shapes are totally different, but I could see why you would describe them both the same way, just from a sense of touch. So from what you said about the kind of sensory deprivation there, yeah, I wonder if you could set up a series of tasks or things that you were doing within the game that would be much easier to do, and you'd get better results, better points or whatever, if you did it with all five senses. But every sense you take away just makes it a little bit harder. If you constructed an activity just so that every one of your senses is activated, but it's still possible without any given sense, it's just a bit harder.
Yeah. And how would that fit in with the 4 keys?
So, well, there's a little bit of serious fun in there, isn't there, already, from what we said, from that, this kind of, making you really feel something and it perhaps changing your perception on a kind of visceral level. We could put some hard fun in there, definitely, by making it quite competitive and then really getting people to feel that sense of, if you're on the lower rung of that social mobility ladder, you're not going to win the game, or you're going to find it very difficult to get points. Yeah.
Got a couple of interesting things come up in the chat. A twister game where instead of colours you get body parts, and you need to complete an action: drink a glass of water, walk the stairs.
Yeah, that's yeah. It might need to get health and safety on that, but yeah. And Alvarez also just expanded on embodied learning a little bit around the whole body involvement. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then tactile and kinetic.
Can we swap out embodied learning?
Yeah.
Just to see what we get.
Playfulness. Might try and do actually a bit of rapid swapping. So feel free to do an idea, but if we swap a few and then see how that develops the ideas we already have, perhaps. Or again, you can suggest in the chat if you really want to see one swapped in or out.
Or shout up, we don't mind.
Yeah, or shout up at this stage. I think there's already a sense of playfulness in there, isn't there? How do we get more playfulness?
Well, yeah, maybe swap out the yellow card and see if we can come up with something more playful.
Choices. Maybe people with more social mobility have more choices.
Oh, Eric's come up with something interesting. How about a game with perfect information that is distributed in cards, and then some cards are blocked to some users? Yeah, that's really...
Yeah, that's a little bit like the sensory deprivation, but represented through cards. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about that with the racism game that I'm working on at the moment. And a really, really easy way to model privilege is just to, many games where you get a situation where you've got a certain number of actions you can take per round. If you reduce the number of actions that certain people can take, it's a really good way of modeling the idea of privilege, I think.
Yeah, these are your choices. These are your choices.
Yeah, privilege walk. That's a really interesting game.
I'm relying on you for the chat because it's disappeared from my screen again. So Just going to maybe switch that red card on a whim. Amy Jo Kim's player types, which is very similar to Bartle's player types, if anyone's familiar with that as well, but looking at whether players prefer to act proactively themselves or interact with what's given to them, and whether they prefer to do that to the content of the game or to other players or with other players. So the content of the game is interesting there. I think, the content of the game could be these very material things representing money and choices and power. And then maybe there's something there about that you have more choices on that stuff if you are, higher up the social ladder. But perhaps in terms of other players, different players are going to have different responses to you, and it's harder to influence people who are not on a similar level socially.
Yeah. That's quite an interesting one. What time have we got, Terry?
It's 1 minute to 3 at the moment.
Okay. Obviously there's a number of different ways in which you can sort of play with this. You can just generate 4 new cards each time. You can get new cards and swap things out, and I'm sure if anybody wants to take a copy of the game, that they can find lots of other different ways of playing it as well. One thing that we haven't done is there's the choices option here, where if you watch the pre-recorded thing that we did, one of the things that Terry and I each brought to that was our own individual choices of our ideal brief that we'd like to see, of the game that we'd really love to make. So you can do that as well. There's been a bit of a theme today with various technical problems, and I don't think anything else could have possibly gone wrong. I couldn't believe it when my laptop just died. That was just the tin hat on the whole thing. In sort of accordance with that theme, I tried to upload the game to the magazine, to Ludagogy today, and then discovered that WordPress doesn't allow you to upload macro-enabled spreadsheets, which I suppose is fairly understandable. If anybody does want a copy of the game, the easiest way to do that is to get into contact with me via email, and I'll send it to you. And we've just put both our emails in the bottom there. So as I say, if you want a copy of the game, send it to you, and you can play with it as much as you like. If you are going to sort of like show it to other people and play it broadly, it'd be really nice if you could mention Ludagogy when you do it. But other than that, no real strictures. And of course, we'd love to hear about any great ideas that you come up with as a result of playing with it.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd really like to see this go out and have a little life, or get developed and changed by people. And if any real implemented games come about because of this, and that really help with some of these problems, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody wants to say any last few words, any of the people that are in the meeting, or have a question to ask. Yeah, we'll keep the meeting open for 5 minutes or so to make sure that everybody's copied everything they want from the chat.
Abhishek's just saying there, it's a good ideation technique and can be applied to more than designing games. Yeah.
As I say, feel free to get in touch, and you can have a copy of it, and you can play with it as you will. As you saw, it's implemented very simply. It's really just a list of 4 items, so you could change those to be whatever you like.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming along to the event today. I'm really, really sorry to everyone about the technical problems that we had. I'm really glad that you stuck with us and made it away over to the Zoom. Absolutely.
Could you just repost the emails for James? He's just joined. Yeah. There we go.
But yeah, it's been really nice to finally get at least 2/3 of our time to play with you and show you what we've been doing.
Yeah, and do stay in touch, everybody. We're outside of Spiel, going to hold events like this more frequently, I think. And it's really good to sort of have ideation kind of events, because all sorts of things come out of that. We did an event it's coming up 2 weeks ago now, isn't it? The panel discussion.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And already a project has come out of that, which is around developing a game around climate change. So yeah, real things do come out of these things.
Good stuff. Been a pleasure. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Next time I'll have a standby computer and a second standby computer just in case. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of mute us and stop the video, but I'll leave the meeting open for a few minutes just in case anybody wants to copy anything from the chat.
Brilliant.
So goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.